This is your Filipino radio experience in Las Vegas. PHLV Radio. PHLV Radio. Reeves Immigration Law Group now brings you Immigration Law on Your Side.
All right, magandang gabi mga kababayan and welcome to another episode of Immigration Law on Your Side right here at PHLV Radio. This is Kuya Yo coming from the PHLV Radio studio in Las Vegas, Nevada. And mamaya kasama natin si Attorney Fil-Am from Reeves Immigration Law Group from their offices in San Francisco, California. Mga kaibigan, when you present yourself for admission into the United States at a designated port of entry, kamukha ng mga international airports, dyan sa LA, sa LAX, or sa San Francisco, or wherever. Now, you may be denied entry and issued an expedited removal order, or commonly known as airport to airport. Narinig nyo na yan, I'm sure. So, mabibigyan ka ng airport to airport if the U.S. Customs Border Protection or CBP finds you inadmissible on certain grounds. So with us tonight is Fil-Am of Reeves Immigration Law Group to explain to us what expedited removal is all about, who are subject to expedited removal, and explain to us under what grounds someone can be removed or airport to airport, and most importantly, how to avoid them. And lastly, mga kababayan, he will brief us on the consequences of expedited removal. So let's bring in Attorney Fil-Am. He is coming in via Zoom from San Francisco, California. Magandang gabi po sa iyo, Attorney Diza.
Magandang gabi, Kuya Johan, at happy Wednesday po sa iyo at sa lahat ng mga viewers and listeners natin. I know we're almost end of August. At very interesting and very timely ang ating pag-uusapan dahil marami sa mga kababayan natin ang nagtatanong at nagkaka-problema pagpasok sa US. At alam natin that we're still in a global pandemic, and most people thought that traveling to the US would not be a problem. It's a problem only with regard to the COVID. But many situations where at the port of entry they were being turned away by the CBP, as na-mention mo nga, as Custom Border Protection officers. Now, itatawag na expedited removal, and of course, there's a very serious consequence pagka nagkaroon po kayo ng records ng expedited removal. Now, ang expedited removal, Kuya Johan, was created in 1996, where an immigration officer or a CBP officer can quickly remove an individual who are considered as, yung mga undocumented or people coming to the airport, as you mentioned, airport, seaport, or even those dun sa checkpoint border ng Mexico and Canada, they can always be turned around or kakaroon ng airport to airport. And that's a possible situation if, as you mentioned, these individuals will be found inadmissible. Most people think that having a valid visa, now usually as a tourist visa, as a business visa or employment visa, wala nang problema pagdating sa airport, but that's not true dahil the CBP officer will not only look at your identity and the validity of your documents, but also can conduct an extensive interview. So pag nagkaroon ng extensive interview, then and found out that your purpose of coming here is different from your actual visa, then they can always remove you from the United States. Ang saklap nito, Kuya Johan, as we mentioned, there is a really serious consequence pag kayo po nagkaroon ng expedited removal records.
Ito pala yung very commonly known as airport to airport. Marami na tayong narinig na mga ganyan, na especially mga kababayan natin. And literally, it is really airport to airport. You'll be sent back to the Philippines or kung saan man kayo nanggaling, or you will be turned around kung galing kayo sa Canada or sa Mexico dahil sa mga border na yan, even if you're driving. So mga kaibigan, very serious itong pag-uusapan natin ngayong gabi. So attorney, on what grounds can this be ordered by the CBP?
There are several grounds where the CBP can find an individual inadmissible at the port of entry, Kuya Johan. Very common dyan yung misrepresentation, right? Where an individual is coming here to visit, right? On a tourist visa. But the problem was there was a prior immigration records, right? Let's say nag-stay siya dito for for about 6 months or 3 to 6 months, and they found out that instead of the individual coming here to visit and to see places, yung parang nag-under the table at nagtatrabaho, one-on-one, or nag-waiter siya sa isang Filipino restaurant, or caregiver siya sa isang care home. So those are the situations where there is a fraud or misrepresentation, or nakita nila na ibang pangalan ang gamit mo, that you're not this person, or nakita nila that when you applied for a tourist visa, you claim that you have money, you claim that you own a business, or you are a president of a company, but at the port of entry that they found out that that's not true. So that is a very common scenario, Kuya Johan, is misrepresentation, or the purpose of coming here is different from the actual visa. Now, the other grounds are also crimes, conviction of a criminal offense, wherein, when you applied for a tourist visa, 5 years ago, right? Okay pa, malinis pa ang records, but, during the validity ng tourist visa, 10 years, nagkaroon po kayo ng records or conviction, doon nila nakikita sa port of entry, by conducting your fingerprints or biometrics, nakita nila na meron po kayong criminal records hindi lang dito sa Amerika, kundi sa Pilipinas din. Or not only a matter of conviction of an offense, Kuya Johan, but also admission of an offense. Let's say if they ask you, have you used drugs in the past, and you said yes, right? Or you brought something with you that's prohibited, we consider it as controlled substance, and that makes you inadmissible, and they can refuse you admission into the U.S. So yun yung very common, Kuya Johan, grounds. Other grounds could also be without valid documentation, without valid passport, lalo yung mga nagko-cross the yung border checkpoint, na hindi pala valid yung documentation nyo, or yung inyong document na present sa port of entry. So those are some of the basic and common grounds na basis for inadmissibility ng CBP officer.
Very early on, attorney, sa mga listeners natin, ilan sa mga nagko-comment at ilan sa mga nagtanong nung nalaman nila itong ating question, dyan sa, related dyan sa sinabi niyo tungkol sa passport, especially yung mga tourists, di ho ba kailangan may certain number of months validity ang inyong passport? Paano po, attorney, kung biglang, 1 month na lang ang validity ng aking passport, is that a ground for inadmissibility, attorney?
There is advisory, Kuya Johan, that people traveling to the United States must have a valid passport for at least 6 months. So kahit po tawag ito, kahit 1 month lang or 2 weeks lang po ang intended vacation nyo dito sa US, you have to extend, But there are emergency, Kuya Johan, and that's why may validity ang certain documents dahil valid until that time, di ba? So that alone would not be a basis for rejection or turning you around just because pa-expire na ang passport nyo, but that could be a basis for them to further investigate kung ano yung purpose mo to come to the US.
Kung ano yung emergency na sinasabi mo. At you may be subjected to more and more questioning. Attorney, itong nangyayaring itong, if we could imagine, guys, sa mga kaibigan natin, mga kababayan na nakikinig at nanonood, when you enter the United States, nandun kayo, ini-interview kayo, saan po ito, doon po sa port of entry, if you are, alam naman natin, nakapila yung mga tao, di ho ba? Pagka po kayo ay binigyan pa ng additional questions, are you brushed aside? Are you sent to another room for questioning? Or doon pa rin sa dati, sa booth kung saan kayo unang tinatanong?
Yeah, yes. So kung pagpasok po natin, so if you try to picture paano po pagpapasok sa US through the airport, usually may mga pila yan, di ba? So dito sa mga tourists or mga non-immigrant, yung mga employment base, L1s, E2s, E1s, B1, B2, tapos iba rin yung sa green card holder, iba rin yung sa US citizen, di ba? So usually doon po kayo pipila. So doon sa pila na yon, mayroong isang officer doon sa may booth, right? Titingnan yung passport nyo, yung visa nyo, kung kayo yan, titingnan yung mukha nyo, kung kayo itong tao pumapasok, right? So pagtingin sa kanilang computer, ito yung tinatawag nating primary inspection, right? Primary inspection in the sense that, the officer will just glance at your documents and glance at you and welcome to America, right? It's usually ang karamihan nangyayaring ganyan. But but there are situations where they look at the visa and the passport and the travel. Na, nandito ka lang last 3 months. Ano, and you spent like 6 months dito sa US and nandito ka na naman. So what's your purpose? You know, you are coming here as a tourist, but you know, you always come here. So mag-isip na yung officer na, oh, you are working dito. So paano ka magiging turista kung masyado kang matagal? Kasi usually, Kuya Johan, kung may binabalikan ka sa home country mo, di ba? Let's say you're in the Philippines or you're working overseas, you know, hindi ka pwede mag-stay ng mga 6 na buwan dahil siyempre either you lose your job or your business dahil wala ka doon. So doon nagkakaroon ngayon ng suspicion ng CBP officer. Or there are situations where titignan din sa kanilang system, yung kanilang computer at may hit na sinasabi where either mayroon kayong immigration violation dati, may criminal records, may nagsumbong sa'yo, so posible rin yon. So in other words, dun sa primary inspection, if there's no problem, they will let you in, right? Tuloy-tuloy ka na, kukunin mo yung luggage mo and meet your family waiting for you outside, yung sumusundo sa'yo. But as we mentioned, pag nagkaroon ng suspicion, yung officer na yan, would lead you to a secondary, yun yung pangalawa, secondary inspection where minsan, you know, nandyan kayo sa airport at hinihintay nyo ang kanilang arrival is supposedly like 10 o'clock in the evening, right? Dyan sa San Francisco airport, pero alauna na, wala pa, right? So, hindi mo rin sila makontak sa messenger or sa tawag. So, you know, you're becoming more, kinakabahan ka na ano nangyari sa susunduin mo. Yung pala, you know, nasa secondary inspection naghihintay. And walang time frame yan, Kuya Johan. As we mentioned, it could take about, you know, 30 minutes to maybe 3 hours at hinihintay yung ibang officer na titignan yung buong records mo, re-review yung buong records mo. So if nothing is found on your records, right, you know, wala ganong tanong sa'yo, babalik lang sa'yo yung passport mo and they will say, welcome to America and get your luggage. Pero kung may further suspicion ulit, right, they might refer you to another secondary inspection too. Ito na yung i-cross-examine ka ng CBP officer. Dito tayo mga Pilipino, minsan dito tayo natutuliro at kinakabahan at kung ano-ano mga nasasabi at naaamin that might impact actually your entry into the US. Ito na yung question and answer, di ba? Na the officer would take a sworn testimony. Meaning, kung ano man yung tanong ng officer, nakasulat na yon. And then yung sagot mo, itatype in din niya para ibibigay sa'yo at the end of the interview. So ito yung secondary inspection number 2 where they will conduct kind of like administrative questioning about your identity, about your intention, about your purpose, about your prior immigration history, and about your criminal conviction and what the purpose is. So doon masaklap, Kuya Johan, kasi kung at one point, and you mentioned that, yeah, I've worked in the US, you know, and yeah, I'm not really coming to visit, but I'm coming to work. You know, that would be a ground for you to be expedited removed. So in that situation, pag nagkaroon po kayo ng interview ganyan, hindi mo pwedeng sabihin, ay,
Okay, mga kabigan, medyo nag-freeze si attorney sa ating Zoom. Babalikan si attorney, so dyan lamang po kayo. Mga kabigan, pinag-uusapan po natin.
ng attorney. So hindi pwedeng, hintayin natin sa attorney Disa, tatakbo dito sa airport. You can't do that. Even telephonic, what do you call this, appearances or representation, you're not allowed to have counsel during that process. Hindi pwede counsel ito sabihin mo or ito yung, you know, stop mo yung interview because you don't want your client to incriminate, you know, himself or herself. So in that situation, Kuya Johan, at pagkatapos ng interview, papabasa sa'yo kung tama lahat ang mga sagot mo, right? Or kung gusto mong mayroong baguhin, then they allow you, you know, to correct kung ano man yung mistake or nabanggit mo. And then after the conclusion of the interview, they will hand you that written question and answer, you know, yung form na yan. And the immigration officer or the CBP officer will make a conclusion that you are removable, right? And they will send you back to your home country at hintayin mo ang next flight. So yun ang yung scenario, Kuya Johan, and there are many situations where clients come to us after the fact, and sometimes, you know, it's going to be very, very, very difficult to overcome kung nasa Pilipinas ka na because there are serious consequences, as we mentioned. if these things happen to you.
And that's in your permanent record na rin. Attorney, very practical itong mga tanong sa atin ng ating mga viewers and listeners. Ito po ba daw na kanilang mga daladala sa kanilang mga bagahe? You know, we're being questioned sa CBP, ano, pagdating natin, may dala ka bang ano diyan, may dala kang daing, may dala kang pagkain, may dala kang ganito. Is there anything na pwedeng mangyari sa iyo na you could be expeditedly removed if you brought something na hindi dapat dalhin dito sa Pilipinas at nakita nilang, bakit may dala ka ng ganito sa bagahe mo? Is that something na we should be worried about, Attorney?
Yes, that's a very good question. Dahil siyempre kahit nagkaroon ka ng primary inspection or tuloy-tuloy ka sa primary inspection, yung pala yung luggage mo, they found something. Right? Kasi after na makalabas ka na, saka palang dadaan sa x-ray yung mga luggages, di ba? So in that situation, they can call you back and conduct secondary inspection kung mayroong prohibited goods or products doon sa luggage mo. You know, mga drugs, controlled substance, or even, you know, you have more than the required amount of money. Right? Usually, ang per person is 10,000. As of now, as from my understanding, 10,000 lang allowed sa'yo per person, and yung pala meron kang dala-dalang 40,000 or 15,000, and they're going to ask you, where did money come from, and that's also a violation ng kanilang CBP guidelines, right? So that could be a possible scenario. Money laundering could be a possible charge against you if that happens. Pag nakita nila na marami kang dalang pera or na meron kang dalang prohibited items. So those are possible scenarios. Now, as we mentioned kanina, Kuya Johan, dun sa third step, primary inspection, secondary inspection 1, secondary inspection 2, the CBP officer allowed to look at your luggages, right? Bubuksan nila yan, and sometimes they can also look at your cell phones and iPads or computers or laptops. So those are things that people should keep in mind when they come here to the US na meron pala silang fiancé dito and they were discussing marriage already. Nasa Pilipinas pa lang na, they're coming here to visit, yung pala merong fiancé na pakakasalan pagdating dito, right? Meron na silang correspondence where, the place and the time and the day to marry. So in that situation, pag nabasa nila yon, right? That would be used against you. Just because, as we mentioned, you don't have so much right, at the port of entry. Hindi ka gaya na nakapasok ka na marami ka ng rights of due process, equal protection, etc. Pero pag you're just seeking admission into the US, very, very limited ang inyong karapatan. And that one of those rights is for them to inspect, to open your luggages and your, what do you call it, yung mga cell phones or laptops. Pwede lang gawin yun.
Okay, so guys, keep it coming. Just comment po sa ating feed ngayon. O kaya naman i-email sa atin dito sa PHLV Radio sa info@phlvradio.com. And also our friends at Reeves Immigration Law Group. Even after the show tonight, you can still send us your questions and we will send them to Attorney Diza. I'm sure marami kayong mga naiisip na gustong itanong ngayon. So nandyan lamang po yung comment box na yan. Gamitin nyo na at malaman natin kung ano pa ang mga nasa isip nyo. And Attorney, so iba't ibang klaseng tao ang pumapasok sa mga port of entry, sa mga airport. Nandyan yung mga US citizens, nandyan yung green card holders, nandyan yung mga other non-immigrant categories. Sino-sino po ba ang maaaring mabigyan ng ganitong expedited removal, who are subject to the expedited removal, Attorney?
Yes, for purposes of our discussion today or tonight, ang usually very common din yung tinatawag na arriving aliens or arriving foreigners, right? People who have a tourist visa or employment visa, usually yan, that's number one. Pangalawa, Kuya Johan, yung mga undocumented, yung mga galing sa Mexico where they cross the border. Pangatlo, yung mga crewman, right? Crewman or mga C1, D1, right? Pwede silang expedited removal, wala silang actually right to a hearing din. So yung mga nag-jump ship. So very, ang kanilang situation is, unfortunate, lalo na kung meron silang asawang citizen or children. They won't be able to help, lalo na kung nag-jump ship, unless may mga exception dyan, like 245I, or they can claim for an asylum. But anyway, so those are the very common, Kuya Johan. And during Trump's time, yung mga nandito ng less than 2 years, di ba? there was a discussion where an immigration officer can quickly remove an individual if they were here below what do you call this before or less than 2 years. Kaya during our conversation during Trump's time that you have to carry proof that you're here for over 2 years already. Or if you are also undocumented, or came in without inspection and you are within the 100 miles of the border, pwede ka rin i-remove. But for purposes of our discussion tonight, mostly itong mga applicable dito, Kuya Johan, those people arriving at the airport or seaport or sa mga border checkpoints. So those are what we call arriving individuals, arriving foreigners with a tourist visa or non-immigrant visa applications.
Mhm. All right. So mga kaibigan, mainit ang ating mga pinag-uusapan ngayong gabi. I'm sure you guys, you have a lot of questions. And especially, paano ba ma-avoid itong expedited removal? What should you do? What should you prepare? Para pagdating nyo sa port of entry ay smooth ang iyong pagpasok dito sa United States of America. Yan po mga kaibigan, sasagutin ni Attorney Ann how to avoid expedited removal sa pagbabalik po ng Immigration Law on Your Side, brought to you by Reeves Immigration Law Group. Let's remind you of our friends from Reeves Immigration Law Group para po naman kung kailangan nyong kontakin sila ay madali nyong mahahanap ang kanilang mga telepono at website. We will be right back.
Reeves Immigration Law Group has been representing immigrants for nearly 40 years. Reeves Immigration Law Group has been fighting for its clients through experience and expertise. With immigration lawyers you can access at reasonable fees, even on Saturday. Payment plans are also available. Call us for your immigration solutions. We can do worldwide telephone and Skype consultations. Reeves Immigration Law Group, 1-800-795-8009. Reeves Immigration Law Group has offices in Los Angeles, San Francisco, China, and Philippines. See us at www.rreeves.com. Reeves Immigration Law Group, 1-800-795-8009.
Alright mga kaibigan, nagbabalik po ang Immigration Law on Your Side right here at PHLV Radio. Ako po ay nagpo-broadcast galing dito sa Las Vegas, Nevada. Si Attorney Diza naman po ay nanggagaling sa San Francisco, California via Zoom sa offices ng Reeves Immigration Law Group. Attorney, paano po ba ma-avoid ang expedited removal?
Of course, ang unang-unang advice natin sa mga kababayan natin coming to the United States is stick to your intention or the nature of your visa. So if you're coming here on a short trip, visiting relatives or attending a funeral or a wedding, or bringing your children to Disneyland, stick to that plan, right? So that's basically yung best advice natin sa kanila. And of course, you're a non-immigrant visa. And by the way, Kuya Johan, yung tanong mo kanina, sino yung mga pwedeng expedited remove, paalalahan na natin mga kababayan natin na yung mga green card holders, we discussed this many times in the past, hindi po kayo pwedeng expedited removal. Very, very seldom that happens because as a green card holder, meron po kayong right to an attorney, due process, kahit nandyan pa kayo sa airport because you're already considered as a lawful permanent resident of the U.S. So hindi po kayo pwedeng airport to airport. Now, if that happens to you, that they found you have criminal records, you have fraud, you committed fraud, and there was certain issues in your immigration history, you need to fight for your green card and tell the CBP officer that you want to see an immigration judge and fight your case before the immigration judge. Hindi pwede aminin mo na lang to and pipirma ka na lang saying the CBP officer that you are already withdrawing or abandoning your green card, and that should not be the situation. But nonetheless, Kuya Johan, isa pa yan, even if you stick to your plan, or to your intent to come to the United States, and if secondary inspection happens to you, right, may mga tanong sa'yo, maghintay ka ng officer, stay calm. I think that's the best advice din na bigyan natin sa mga kababayan natin. I know it's going to be a very difficult situation dahil, galing ka sa flight. Usually pag street flight pa yan galing sa Pilipinas, maybe 12-15 hours yan, right, from the airport to, pagpasok dito, and then hindi ka pa kumakain, naghintay ka ng 3 oras, right, balisa ka na dahil gutom ka or naantok ka or Ang daming nangyayari sa'yo. But, the best practice pa rin is stay calm, listen very carefully sa mga tanong sa inyo, be respectful din sa immigration officer, but not to the point of like surrendering already, yung kanilang findings that you committed fraud or you have this immigration history. Be mindful of what you tell the officer because that would be used against you. Of course, we don't advise our client to tell a lie, right? If there was already a finding of misrepresentation or fraud, right? May mga timely retraction na sinasabi tayo, Kuya Johan, na nagtrabaho ako at one time. Kasi baka naman tinawagan na yung employer mo before they even ask you questions and you insist of like, lying to them, and that might implicate you in the future application. So that's what we call also timely retraction para wala kayong tinatawag na misrepresentation records. So in that situation, Kuya Johan, pwede mo i-withdraw yung application mo. Meaning, wala kang expedited removal, sasabihin mo lang, hindi na ako, sige, uwi na lang ako at my own volition. That could be what we call a withdrawal of application. But of course, ika-cancel pa rin yung tourist visa. If that's valid for another 5 years, cancel na po yan. But, there's an opportunity for you to reapply for a tourist visa. But also, of course, considering your immigration history and what happened to you at the airport, that might be taken and considered when you reapply for a tourist visa. Now, yun yung pangalawa. Ang pangatlo, Kuya Johan, of course, as a practice pointer sa mga kababayan natin entering the US, be mindful of what you bring. Di ba? So, tignan nyo lahat yung mga luggages ninyo, kung ano yung mga nilagay nyo dyan. Kasi hindi mo alam kung ito ba ay dala-dala mong drugs ay may controlled substance under federal law. O ito bang dala-dala mong drugs allowed, mostly sa mga kababayan natin, although ang cannabis or yung mga gummies that have marijuana on it, Kuya Johan, right? Anywhere, pwede mo nang bilhin sa California in most states, di ba? Dala-dala mo yung gummies yan, parang candy lang yan. Right? Pagpasok mo sa US at makita nila yan, that could be a basis for your expedited removal because, marijuana is still a federal offense. Right? Even if you are not convicted of using marijuana, the mere fact that you possess yung gummy na yan that has a marijuana content could be a basis for expedited removal. So be mindful of what you bring, right? So ilan bang luggages ang dala mo? Aside from your yung backpack mo, meron kang 6 luggages, mag-isa ka lang. Lahat ng memorabilia mo sa buhay mo, dala-dala mo na, yung mga pictures, yung mga photographs and everything. Don't do that kasi ang intent mo lang is come here to visit, right? Pag nakita nila, hindi ka na yata babalik sa Pilipinas, dala mo na ang buong bahay, laman ng bahay, that could be a basis for the secondary inspection and expedited removal. Also mga documents showing that you try to extend or rather change your status from probably tourist visa at gusto mo registered nurse ako, ito na yung mga diploma ko, yung mga credentials ko, and yung aking nursing board result, etc. So those are also, things that you should not be bringing if you're coming here on a tourist visa. Okay lang yan if you're coming here to work as a registered nurse. But those are our tips sa ating mga kababayan, right? Be calm and be respectful. Be mindful of what you tell the immigration officer, and be mindful of what you bring on your trips, and of course, if the immigration officer already found that you committed fraud, you can always admit and timely retract of that misrepresentation.
Mm-hmm. So yung nasabi nyo, that's for most of our kababayans, bagong information yon. Before you were given that expedited removal order, you can actually withdraw pala and voluntarily umuwi ka na lang. So although na parang airport to airport ka pa rin, pero yung record mo ay wala kang order na nagbigyan ka ng expedited removal.
Correct. Wala kang removal order. Withdraw mo lang yung admission para lang turn around ka na. Punta ka sa Amerika, tapos sasabihin, ayaw ko nang pumunta, babalik na lang ako. Parang ganun yun. In that situation, canceled pa rin yung visa mo. Right? Pero at least wala kang expedited removal, wala kang finding ng fraud, o wala kang finding of any grounds of inadmissibility.
Aha, okay. And I'm sure mga kababayan, once again, I know you have a lot of questions about this topic. So mangyari po lamang ipadala sa atin dito sa PHLV Radio. And we will send it over sa Reeves Immigration Law Group para po naman masagot pa ang inyong mga katanungan. And marami pa tayong mga nakadikit na mga issues dito. So ipadala lamang po sa info@phlvradio.com o kaya sa mga kaibigan natin sa Reeves Immigration Law Group, ang kanilang website www.rreeves.com. Now, dito tayo, attorney, sa kung sakaling sinamampalad na nabigyan nga sila ng order na they were expeditedly removed from the United States, na airport to airport. Ano po ba, attorney, ang mga consequences nito? Meron bang bar or ban na hindi siya pwede makabalik sa US? Ano po ba ang mga consequences nito, attorney?
Before we answer that, Kuya Johan, the other question probably that our kababayan would ask is, let's say mayroon akong grounds of inadmissibility, umamin ako na mayroon akong fraud, mayroong criminal records, is there a way that I can still enter the US? Right? So, kasi kung finding na mayroon ka ng inadmissibility findings at ipadadala ka na nila sa airline, or babalik ka sa home country mo, pwede ka pa bang pumasok sa US? Pwede mo bang i-appeal yon? Yeah, well, there might be a basis for appeal, pero uwi ka pa rin. But in order for people to enter the US, if they have a claim for asylum, meaning that, as a signatory of the UN Convention and our immigration laws, Kuya Johan, if people are claiming asylum and say that, I don't want to go back because my life is in danger, right? I am a member of this group, and the government is unable to protect me when I go back. People are hunting me, or this group of the military is hunting me and looking after me, and I not feel comfortable going home. In that situation, Kuya Johan, despite the inadmissibility of fraud, misrepresentation, or lack of valid documentation, the CBP officer would let you in and will forward your file to the immigration officer or to the asylum officer for credible fear interview. Credible ka ba? Mayroon bang basis for asylum? And if that happens, then you might be able to see an immigration judge to argue that you are able to file for the asylum. In that situation, Kuya Johan, hindi ka nila tatanggapin as a tourist visa kung yun yung visa mo, or as an employment visa, but the CBP officer will parole you in, meaning they will allow you here to fight for your claim, kung meron kang asylum. That's the common situation, or that's the situation. That's the only situation where you're only allowed to come here or come into the US despite the findings of inadmissibility. Now, if that happens to you, Kuya Johan, mahirap itong expedited removal process, because in that situation, as we mentioned, wala kang right to an attorney, di ba? And also, pag naghintay ka ng susunod na flight, lalo na yung COVID situation and pandemic, global pandemic that's happening right now, hindi ka kaagad babalik. In a few hours, tapos ng interview mo, susunod na oras, meron ka ng flight back home. In this situation, ngayon, Kuya Johan, minsan mga client would be, in the custody of immigration officers. So nandun lang sila sa airport, dun sa, custody nila. I hate to say it, but they were in kind of prison dun sa airport, and they're waiting for the next flight that's available. So kung palang ang sa rakyan mo, most likely pal lang din. Kasi hindi ka naman pwede dadaan sa Korea or sa Japan, lalo na yung pandemic, because may quarantine. So most likely, ang hintayin mong next flight would be yung direct flight to the Philippines. And sometimes that happens in a day or 2 days before you have that next flight. So yun yung masaklap na consequence po ng secondary inspection and eventual expedited removal. Now, if that happens to you at talagang umuwi na kayo, you consult an immigration attorney, the consequence of the order of removal would be a 5-year ban. Right? 5 years na hindi po kayo makakabalik sa US, and plus also na-cancel na po yung inyong visa. So kung tourist visa kayo, as we mentioned, meron pa kayong mga ilang years na natitira, wala na yon, canceled na yon. And also at the same time, ban ka ng 5 years. So kahit meron po kayong pakakasalan na US citizen, right? Or meron kayong fiancé, or meron ng available na yung visa na pinetition ng magulang yan, you waited for several years para maging available yan, you are not able to come to the US for 5 years dahil ban po kayo ng 5 years. And then also the other consequence, if you committed fraud or you lied, and immigration found out that you misrepresented material facts during the interview on your immigration history, pwede rin findings kayo ng fraud. So walang time frame to, Kuya Johan. So lumagpas pa ng 10 taon, or 20 years, kung may fraud ka sa immigration, you have to deal with that. You can only file for grounds of inadmissibility kung mayroon kang qualifying relatives kahit mayroon kang immediate relatives. So ito yung mga consequence, serious consequence po ng expedited removal. Marami sa mga kababayan din natin nagtatanong, attorney, pwede bang shorten po yung 5 years? Di ba? Pwede bang pumasok dyan shorter than 5 years? Yeah, may mga waivers po tayo dyan. As we discussed in our previous discussion, pwede mag-file ng 601 waiver for the misrepresentation para mawala o mapatawad yung inyong kasalanan by showing that your spouse or parents would suffer extreme hardship, or pwede tayong mag-apply ng I-212. Right? Yung I-212 na yun, that's a form saying that you are requesting immigration office to allow you to enter the United States after yung removal mo para mawala yung 5 years. But these are things that are complicated and also need the advice and assistance of an immigration attorney. If you and your family experience an expedited removal at meron po kayong kamag-anak na magpe-petition sa inyo, it's not simple as just filing the petition and do the process. You have to do this kind of waivers.
Okay, so wealth of information once again mga kababayan ngayong gabi sa immigration law on your side. Especially po, marami na ngayon as we wake up slowly from the pandemic, maraming gustong bumiyahe. So keep in mind yung mga pointers ni attorney, especially yung how to avoid the expedited removal. So yung airport to airport. So maganda pong kung ka-join nyo lang po ngayong gabi sa ating immigration law on your side, you could watch this again on our platforms on PHLV Radio on our Facebook page and YouTube, and also on Amazon Fire TV. And also the audio part will be a podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. So also sa mga nakikinig sa radio ngayon sa PHLV Radio app, maraming salamat po. Attorney, kumusta na po ang ang law firm diyan sa San Francisco, California, at alam kong maraming mga kaganapan diyan sa Northern California, and the wildfire being one of them. Pero po kumusta po ang ating mga kababayan diyan sa gawing Northern California?
Yes, Kuya Johan, there's an ongoing fire, the Dixie Fire, that's affecting the Northern California. So there's an advisory of the smoke and unsafe winds coming through. But the good thing about the Bay Area, Kuya Johan, may mga simoy ng hangin naman. So it's not as bad as compared to probably Central California. But anyway, keep on being safe sa mga kababayan natin. I know we also got good news, I think was it yesterday, where the Pfizer vaccine is now considered as an FDA approved. So yung mga hindi pa nagpapavaccine dyan, that mayroon po kayong hesitation to do the vaccine. I mean, we should believe in science and we are all in this together. And before we end, Kuya Johan, I would like to remind sa mga viewers pa rin natin who are na-update dun sa immigration very quickly, yung prosecutorial discretion that we discussed recently where Biden allowed, the dismissal, termination, or administrative closure ng cases for people in removal proceedings, right? But now there was an injunction, meaning a Texas judge stop, right, yung implementation ng policy na yan. So we keep watching our program and checking our website, yung mga social media po natin at Reeves Immigration Law Group and FJD sa Immigration Law Attorney to update you itong mga nagaganap na immigration dito po sa United States. And again, Kuya Johan, maraming salamat for always inviting me and giving public service sa mga kababayan natin, at saka sa mga may mga tanong, feel free to ask your questions sa baba po ng ating video, right, yung ating programa, at itag lang po ninyo kami ni Kuya Johan and we'll try our best to respond to you, to your inquiries. Probably we'll just privately message you or set you an appointment to talk about your immigration concerns. Now, we at Reeves Immigration Law Group, fully reopen na po kami, and we now allow in-person consultation, but also in observance with the CDC guidelines and local laws, sinusunod pa rin natin yung wearing face mask kahit nasa office po natin, office po tayo, and even if we are fully vaccinated. In fact, a warning lang po sa mga people intending to come to the office, we now require either a vaccine records or proof that you are negative, taken within the last week. In fact, ang San Francisco is the first city in the US that implemented, Kuya Johan, yung mga pumapasok sa mga bars or public places to show the vaccination record. So it's very easy, pwedeng i-download sa inyong cellphones to show that you are already fully vaccinated. Just to make sure that we're not spreading the virus, especially nagkakaroon tayo ng Delta variant. And again, sa lahat ng mga viewers and listeners natin, maraming salamat, whether you have immigration concerns or just watching us for pleasure, right? Keep safe, stay safe, and get your vaccines if you haven't done so. Maraming pong salamat and have a great day to everyone.
Maraming salamat po, Attorney Diza, nanggagaling po sa Reeves Immigration Law Group sa San Francisco, California. May opisina rin dito sa LA area and sa China and dyan sa Makati, dyan sa Pilipinas. Kumusta na lamang po sa inyong lahat dyan, sa lahat po ng branches ng ating Reeves Immigration Law Group. And they are the major presenter of this program. Maraming salamat po. Ang Immigration Law on Your Side is right here at PHLV Radio every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Time and 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And again, we can be heard on phlvradio.com, on the app, and also on our podcast platforms on iHeartRadio. Nandiyan din po tayo sa Spotify and Apple Podcast, yung dating iTunes. So kahit saan man po kayo, ay mabibitbit nyo ang programang ito. So we will see you next time again right here at PHLV Radio from Las Vegas. Ito po si Kuya Yo, nanggagaling sa PHLV Radio Studios. We will see you next time. Ingat lamang po kayong lahat and stay safe.
Reeves Immigration Law Group has just brought you Immigration Law on Your Side. Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Pacific on PHLV Radio. This is your Filipino radio experience in Las Vegas. PHLV Radio.